Hey there all, Umber here, and thanks for checking out the video. Today I'd like to talk about how I got the Mage card mount in Final Fantasy XIV, the way I went about doing it, and some of the more difficult aspects of obtaining it, as well as why I think you should work on this mount as well. First, let me explain a little bit about Triple Triad, for those that might not be aware. Triple Triad is a minigame that originated in Final Fantasy VIII, and while there are a few differences in the way the 14 version works, its core concepts are carried over. The game takes place between either player versus player or player versus NPC. Opponents choose a deck of 5 cards, where each card has 4 numbers that correspond to the 4 sides of the card. At the most basic level of play, players are attempting to capture opponents' cards by placing the side with a bigger number next to the side with a smaller number on a card you don't own. Doing so will flip the card to your color, adding it to your total. Once all 9 slots on the board are filled, then the game is over, and the player with the highest card total wins. Now once you begin to get into the game, you'll find it's rare for just this basic rule set to be used. Most NPCs will have a different rule set that add a challenge or twist into the mix, such as Reverse, where now the smaller number will capture the bigger number, or Chaos, where the cards you were able to play is chosen at random. With that basic introduction out of the way, let's go over what you'll need to do in order to unlock the mount. To unlock the quest that'll give you the mount, you must first obtain all cards from number 1 to 312. Which is basically every card released up to the very end of Shadowbringers, meaning that no Endwalker cards, nor the special cards found at the very end of the card list are required for this mount. Now, a large amount of the cards you'll need are found from NPC opponents. However, plenty can only be found from running specific duties like dungeons, raids, field operations, or even from completing side content like the Masked Carnival. Some cards can even be found at both an NPC or in a duty, in which case I'd highly suggest getting the card from the NPC, as well they might have lower drop rates. Queue times and random players will make running duties much slower to obtain these cards. Be aware though that while doing the MSQ will unlock most Triple Triad NPCs, there will be a few tied to random side quests and objectives throughout the game. In total, there are 25 that need to be unlocked in order to complete this mount. So why don't we start from how I decided to go about this grind. First looked up a few guides and found 2 very helpful sites, one being arrtripletriad.com, a site that lists every card in numbered order and shows you where to obtain them. If you make an account, you can also check off every card you have in order to keep track of what you still need. However, I just used the in-game list and simply used the site to track down any NPCs I was missing. The next tool I found was a guide by Comrade Kupo, wherein they give an extensive breakdown over the more difficult to obtain cards, as well as including decks they use for specific rule sets, which all do very well at ensuring a generally high win rate against NPCs. If you prefer written guides, then please go check them out. Both sites will be linked in the description. Once I had some good decks ready, I started off by simply checking out every zone in the game, fighting any NPCs I could find, and grinding wins until I got the cards I needed. This took me a few weeks to do, as I grinded in between roulettes with friends, or was just messing around before work or bed. Once I started to amass a good collection of cards, I had little trouble getting wins against the basic NPCs, though some of the more difficult ones took a while, like the Imperial Deserter in the Alamegan Quarter. Unfortunately, it's just an aspect you're going to have to deal with when going for the mount. RNG is a big factor in card drops, so much so that there are about 20 cards that can only be found from the random card packs you can buy in the Gold Saucer. That's on top of the near million MGP you're going to need to buy cards directly. MGP can be slow to grind unless there is a Moogle Tombstone event happening, so if you don't like the Gold Saucer minigames, I would suggest waiting for one of those to pop up. The last card found at the Gold Saucer is the Phoenix card, which requires you to place first in one open tournament. A difficult card for those who aren't great at the minigame, but if you want to make things easier on yourself, you can play tournaments late in the evening or early in the morning to reduce the amount of real players you face. Visiting a less popular data center like Dynamis can also help increase the chances you'll play against NPCs, which in general are a lot easier to win against. After obtaining all the cards from NPCs that were available to me, I went about getting any from duties I was still missing. Now the nice thing about cards from duties is aside from alliance raids, they are personal drops that happen at the end of the instance, meaning you only have one factor of RNG to worry about. Now to be honest, I already had most of the duty specific cards when I started. I have all my jobs at 90, so in the course of leveling them I ended up getting most of the cards. That said, if you are still missing a good amount, you might have a long grind ahead of you. Unsynced duties can be faster at lower levels, but from what I've seen, they tend to have lower drop rates. So you'll have to pick and choose which instances you want to queue for versus just grinding them out solo. Anything below level 60 I would say is fairly easy for a geared up 90 to unsync quickly, but higher than that I would suggest queuing as the increased drop rates tend to be worth the wait time. In my own experience, the cards that took me the longest were numbers 275, Unknown, which drops from Ananesis and Niter, card number 202, Genbu from Hell's Lid, and worst of all, card number 219, Takachi, from Saint Moshian's Arboretum Hard. This little piece of shit took me nearly 40 unsynced runs to get, since I stubbornly refused to queue for this place. Don't be like me, just queue for the ones that are giving you trouble. It's very likely to save you time. Moving on, I worked on the EX trials that were required next. There are 5 total, although only 1 can be done solo. Gordon's Reign is the easiest by far, as its low level allows you to quickly complete it unsynced at level 90. For the next 4, you will need others to help, but an unsynced party of 90s can clear each one in about 3 minutes. First, we have Memoria Misria, an exclusive EX trial that is unlocked through the Bozja questline, and as you'll need to do Bozja anyway for this mount, you might as well knock this out sooner rather than later. Plus, you'll be able to get the dyeable version of the Shadowbringer's job armor, if you need any for your glamps. The last 3 that are required are Ruby, Emerald, and Diamond Weapon. You must complete each EX once and turn in 1 totem from each to the NPC Centiana in More Donuts. These are all easily doable nowadays, and the only one that might give you trouble is Memoria, as you may need to do it a few times to get the card. Next on the list we have Blue Mage. Now, similar to the duty cards, I had already completed all the required Blue Mage quests and challenges needed for the mount. But for those who may need some in-depth help, Oric's basic guide to the Mass Carnival is a big help in completing all the stages, but be aware only the 25th, 30th, and 31st stage are required for the mount. Blue Academy's guides to these stages are excellent for visual learners who want to see the fights before diving in. Once again, links to both creators will be in the description. I'm also going to mention that several cards can only be found by completing shared fates in the Shadowbringer zones or by completing tasks at the Ishgard Restoration. The Shadowbringer fates are easy enough, but have fun completing the 60 plus fates required for rank 3 in Kalusha. For the Ishgard Restoration, you'll need to level a crafter or gatherer up to level 70 in order to complete L Tool's custom deliveries. A bit of a grind if you don't have either, but worth it not just for the cards, but also another mount, as you'll unlock one for completing their storyline. After you've maxed your rank, you'll still need 1,000 Skybuilder scripts, which can be easily farmed at the Diadem, or participating at Fates, a fun string of minigames that takes about 20 minutes to complete, and they're available every 2 hours for a whole day before they're gone for about a day or 2. Now for the final set of cards, and the ones that can by far take the longest if you haven't already completed them. Eureka and Bozja are special instances known as field operations, which take place across multiple large-scale battle zones where players can group up with others, take on groups of enemies and mini-bosses, as well as challenge a few high-level raids for unique rewards such as mounts and glam. For those looking just to complete the Triple Triad mount, you'll need to complete most of Eureka, but all of Bozja. For Eureka, you must simply reach the final zone, complete the initial quest there, and once done, the final NPC will become available. Now, while Eureka can take some time to do solo, it is in fact completely doable solo. And if you have no interest in relics or armor grinds, you can quite easily just kill enemies around your level until you're high enough to progress to the next zone. However, I highly suggest exploring all of the content Eureka has to offer, as the elemental armor sets are very unique pieces of glam, and the Waldesian Arsenal, the raid that can be found at the end, has been made much easier to complete, thanks to the help of Discord servers such as Ether Bozja, Waldesian Arsenal, where veterans help guide new players through the raid quite often. And last but not least, we have Bozja, which takes more time and effort to complete than Eureka. Going through Bozja solo is much slower, for the simple fact that you cannot grind normal enemies to raise your resistance rank. Critical engagements, the zone's equivalent to a fate, are required for progress, and joining a party makes it much easier to get the gold rating for the highest rewards. The other factor that can make Bozja a pain to complete is the 3 raids required for completion. Castrum Lacus Latore, Librum Regine, the Dolorata are basically more complicated alliance raids found across the 2 zones of Bozja. The Castrum and Dolorata are easier to get into as they can be found directly in their respective zones, and are generally not as punishing as the Librum. Even getting into a good Deliverance run will be difficult for first timers, depending on your server, as the raid must be manually queued for, and the instance will start after a 10-minute wait no matter how many people are in the queue. For example, the first time I attempted Deliverance, I got queued with one other person. Needless to say, I didn't even try and stick around. Once again, you may need to make use of recruitment servers such as ABBA in order to complete Deliverance. It's unfortunate that the devs didn't really seem to take outdated content's popularity into account when designing how to obtain these cards, but the community makes it work all the same. That said, on Ether, Bozja and Eureka player counts are still fairly high, and as long as you're playing during peak hours, Deliverance is the only real hurdle you'll find when completing either area. But remember that once you've completed all the raids, you will still need Bozja clusters to purchase the cards. These are dropped from enemies with 4th Legion in their name. This is doable solo with the right action setup, but will be much quicker with a party or just a few friends. But with that, we've really reached the end of the grind, and if everything's gone right, you've managed to get yourself one of the coolest and rarest mounts in the game. Now throughout the video, I talked about how you want to get this mount, but I'd like to take a moment to talk about why I think you should get it. Because despite the dozens and dozens of hours it could take to complete, it's really casually friendly, with the only small hiccup being Deliverance regimen. As someone who's not completed a Savage or Ultimate fight, I found this to be an extremely fun grind that made me explore content I likely would have never done without that incentive. For example, Bozja and Eureka were so much more interesting than I had expected them to be. Being forced to take on all these different aspects of the game has made me a better and more sociable player than I ever was. Completing all these different pieces of content are rewards in their own way, as I've obtained interesting mounts and glams throughout the grind to add to my collection, and I'm even planning to take on the Baldessian Arsenal and Deliverance Registering Savage eventually. So overall, I highly recommend you begin your grind on the Magic card mount if you haven't already. You will not regret it. Except for the fact that the Triple Triad theme will be forever burned into your brain. But yeah, that's it. I really hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope to have more for you soon. I'm planning on making a video on my thoughts and experiences in Eureka and a few other ideas I've had. But before you click off, please take a moment to check out all the creators and guides I mentioned throughout the video. The FF14 community is built upon people like them who put out such amazing and easy to understand guides that help their fellow players complete these tasks. So show them some support in any way you can. And until the next time we meet, take care and safe travels.